time zone in Montana is at 105 degrees. It's right there. Here in Great Falls, we're 22 minutes even further behind London time. So we're actually 7 hours and 22 minutes.
So was their chronometer set at London time?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
So
that's how they did that.
On Captain Cook's third voyage, this is the late 1770s, 1776, he's going to do this third voyage to find the Northwest Passage, and he's got a chronometer. And the Americans, of course, it's a revolution is underway. We've declared independence, but they've told all their maritime ship captains, leave Captain Cook alone. He's a great, famous explorer, and he's on this third voyage. And his goal is to find the Northwest Passage. He's got this chronometer, and he's already used it on his trip across the Atlantic, gets to the Caribbean. He said, man, this is a great device for calculating longitude. It's so much easier than taking readings in the night sky and trying to correlate what time is it in Greenwich, England.
Right.
So he's got this chronometer, and he goes up the west coast of North America all the way to the Bering Strait. He's taking readings on the west coast of North America, calculating longitude and latitude. That's why this map is perfect. That's why the shape of this map is because of what Captain Cook did with the early readings coming up.
So Lewis and Clark knew how far they had to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
They just didn't know what was in there.
Well, this is the third trip for Captain Cook.
Third trip.
The third
voyage.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, when he did, okay.
Yeah.
And
This is the voyage when he's trying to find the Northwest Passage up through the.
oh,
Bering
so
Strait.
this part was Captain Cook.
Yeah.
So when Lewis and Clark came, they already have everything almost, not everything.
Yeah, they had this map drawn, but Captain Cook had an officer on board a ship named George Vancouver.
Yes.
So from 1877 or 1777 to 1792,
Yeah.
George Vancouver now has his own, he's a ship captain. He comes back, his mission on coming over here is to survey the northern part of North America and see if there is an inlet sea,
Yes.
like Hudson Bay.
Yes.
If there's an inlet sea on the west side, then that might facilitate a Northwest Passage through
Yes.
the interior Canada.
Yes.
And he proves that such a sea doesn't exist. However, that's why the detail on this map gets so much better through here. It's because of George Vancouver. Vancouver Island's named after him. And so that's why it shows up on the map. Well, both Cook and Vancouver both sailed by the mouth of the Columbia River here.
Yes.
Evidently, you can't see it. You can sail right by it and not know there's a big river there. And it was an American ship captain named Robert Gray, who was the one that sailed into the estuary of the Columbia River and traded with the natives. And then later on, he ran into George Vancouver and he said, did you know there's a big river down here? And Vancouver didn't. So he sent a survey crew back down there. They went into the estuary and they surveyed the mouth of the Columbia River, and that's why it shows up on this map. It's George Vancouver in the 3 summers, 1792, 93, 94, and he provided that information back to Aaron Aerosmith when he was drawing this map.
So Captain Lewis and Clark never knew Columbia River.
Yeah, because it showed up on this map. And Jefferson and Lewis had a copy of this map.
Oh, okay.
So they knew about the Columbia River. And if you watch the video in there, the movie that Ken Burns puts on, he says, by the time Lewis and Clark get to the West Coast, the natives have been trading with ship captains, American, British, whoever, for decades.
Yes.
You know, so they had seen white men before over here on the West Coast before Lewis and Clark got there. So another thing that shows up on the map is a trader named Alexander Mackenzie, worked for Northwest Trading out of the Great Lakes. He was a British company, but he was a Scotsman. He tried to get to the Pacific in 1789. This is before Captain Cook.
Yeah.
He got on a big river in Canada, and it took him all the way to the Arctic, right there.
Yes.
That's the Mackenzie River in Canada. It's named after Alexander Mackenzie.
Yes.
And in 1789, he tried to get to the Pacific and failed. So a few years later, he tried again. This time, he had some Indian guides and some voyagers with him. And it shows up on this map right here. This is Alexander Mackenzie in 1793, makes it all the way to the Pacific. He's the first European to make it all the way across North America above Mexico. Alexander Mackenzie. He does this 12 years before Lewis and Clark. 12 years before Lewis and Clark.
Yes. The chronometer, is it the chronometer, the device?
Chronometer.
When was it done? When was it discovered?
Well, there's a great movie you can watch. It's called Longitude.
Yes.
It's a British film company, and they talk about how they developed these chronometers. And
Okay.
It was a guy named John Harrison. He was a cabinet maker.
Yes,
in
Harrison.
England.
Okay, I got
John
you.
Harrison. He
Yes.
developed a series of clocks that relied on pendulums
Yes.
that counteracted the motion of a ship. Now, those were his first versions. And so there's the Harrison 1, Harrison 2, Harrison 3. In the meantime, he was also working with a watchmaker. And by the time he got to the Harrison 5, it was a chronometer about this big.
Yes.
It was just a big watch
Yes.
and very accurate. And they had developed techniques where they could correct the inaccuracies of the watch on the fly.
Yes.
So every high noon, you figure out what high noon is, look at your chronometer. Did it go 24 hours or did it go 23 hours and 56 minutes?
Was this something you charged with the spring?
Yeah, it was a spring clock.
The chronometer.
Yeah.
You charge it to the spring.
Yeah.
Like how often you charge it to the spring?
I think you have to wind them like every day. They're probably
Oh.
good for like 3 days. but
Yes.
You need to keep constant tension in there
And you connected with the moon,
with the sun.
with the
Because
sun.
the sun every day, if you're in one spot, the sun's going to be at high noon at exactly
Okay.
24 hours. That's just the way we set up time is based on the sun rotating.
But if you are already wanted the chronometer to be Greenwich time, you are not going to correct it
Sure you are.
when you go to
Yeah,
Newton. Okay, tell me.
so we're 7 hours behind London time.
Okay.
So high noon here is actually 7 p.m. in London.
No,
So your chronometer may be saying 7 p.m. So I'm in one spot. So high noon where I'm at should be at 7 p.m. every day. And if I see that it's lagging or leading more than 24 hours every day, then I know what the correction is to that chronometer that I have to apply and make sure, and I have to apply it continuously to keep that chronometer on London time.
You are Lewis and Clark, and you have the chronometer.
Yes.
So you don't know what time it is here. You left.
Sure you do. You just walk up to a neighbor and ask what time is it.
No, there. At that time, he left London.
He had a
Oh no,
chronometer.
not. He left St. Louis with a chronometer.
Yes.
So he have to leave it at the time of St. Louis, right? He's not going to correct it.
It's London time, right?
It's always London time.
Yes,
Your
okay, got you,
chronometer
got
should
you.
always be running on London or Greenwich time.
Yeah,
They're
each
right next to
location.
each other.
Yeah, each
And
location.
Oh, okay.
You gotta keep track of London time. Make sure that chronometer stays on track with London time. So you gotta apply this correction continuously. And
And whenever like he reaches a location, he just takes the reading and he can know like.
you gotta take a reading on high noon.
Yeah.
To get your local time.
Yes.
And then you have to look at your chronometer, which you have been correcting continuously
Yeah.
on your trip to represent London time. And the difference is, gives you how many hours and minutes times 15 for every, 15 for every hour, and that'd give you the
I'm
longitude.
sorry, I'm confused. How does the chronometer remember the London Greenwich time?
Because you set it for London time at a known place on Earth.
Okay,
So if you're in St. Louis, they have gone through all the calculations of.
I got okay,
Of,
okay, got you.
Because there's an alternative way to calculate longitude.
Yes,
The astronomers in Greenwich had developed these almanacs, these nautical
Yes.
almanacs.
Yes.
And they calculated the distance, the spatial difference between like the moon and a given star.
yes,
And they did that for 2 years in advance.
yes,
This distance. And of course, you can't observe that distance all the time.
Yes.
But they've done enough of it that they can interpolate
yes,
the time when it's daylight, when you can't see the moon's not up.
Yes.
They know what this distance is. And they did it for multiple stars up in the sky.
Yes.
So you have this almanac that gives you the distance between the moon and an object.
yes,
When it's at that radius or that radial distance, all you have to do is, once you correct it for various things, is go look up in the almanac for that event in that column, and it'll tell you what time it is in Greenwich. And that's how they were calculating longitude until they had chronometers.
And how many pages is that almanac?
Oh, I think they were.
Pages,
They
pages?
were books, and they were done for like 2 years in advance. So Lewis had an almanac that was good for 1804 and 1805.
Yes.
He didn't have one for 1806. But Lewis and Clark only calculated the actual longitude. They only had the calculation for actual longitude at 3 sites, and that was the mouth of the Missouri, this Mandan village in North Dakota, and the mouth of the Columbia River. They never really calculated it anywhere else, and part of the reason is it's because they had so much trouble with their chronometer.
Yeah.
They just kind of finally gave up.
Yes. Yes. How many people died?
Just one.
One person died.
One
And
person.
the total number was what? How?
Well, they start off with like 51 people coming out of St. Louis, going up the Missouri River.
Yes.
And then in the summer, or the winter of 1804, 1805, in the spring, they sent a bunch of people back down on the keelboat.
Yes.
They had a bunch of specimens and journals.
Yes.
And then the actual expedition that took off from the Mandan village in the spring of 1805 was 33. But that
Yes.
included Sacagawea and her son,
Yes.
Jean Baptiste. And it also included York, who was the slave for Captain Clark.
As a cook.
Yeah. No, he was a slave. But he was a member of the Corps. He did just as much work as anybody else.
Okay.
So there was 33 people that took off. Out of those,
Yes.
one was a woman, one was a baby.
And how long did they live after they came back? They came back 1804, 06?
Yeah, they left in the spring of 1804.
Yeah.
And they didn't get back until like September of 1806.
Yes.
So it was
And
2
one
years,
yeah.
so many months.
And one of them, after that, one of them become a governor, I think.
Yeah, both of them did.
Yeah.
Meriwether Lewis was the governor of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And Clark was the superintendent over Indian affairs
Yes, yes.
for that.
Yes.
And then, of course, Lewis ends up committing suicide a couple of years later, and Clark ends up being the superintendent.
Was it suicide?
Well,
Is it-
everybody thinks it's
like John
suicide.
Kennedy. This is
Yeah.
they kept telling somebody ambushed him and somebody.
Well, he was in not a very good place, on the Natchez Trace.
Is Captain Clark has anything to do with Council Bluffs?
Which bluffs?
Council Bluffs.
Council Bluffs.
Between
Yeah, I think that's where they had their first. That's in is it Nebraska? Council Bluffs, Nebraska.
is it Council Bluff named after?
Yeah, they
Right across from Omaha.
yeah
Is-
they met with some Indians there.
But is Council Bluff named by him?
I think so. I think
Because it
that,
seems like he was the council, right, of the Indian?
yeah, they were having meetings all the way up with
Yeah.
different tribes.
Yeah.
And so that's,
He was like the same attitude of Jimmy Carter, right? He goes everywhere just to make people. Jimmy Carter, right? He was a peaceful man, right?
I think Clark was probably the extrovert, the people person.
Yes.
Lewis was more of an introvert, more of he had a short temper, and the two leaders together kind of offset each other. So one of them was more of a leader of men, the other one was more of a leader of the details of the expedition and stuff.
Yeah, Lewis did not want Sacagawea with him. He was upset that he got a woman with him through. He got upset, I think.
They had a woman with him?
Lewis did not want Sacagawea to go with them, right? When they got the Sacagawea to join them with her son and husband.
Well, part of the reason Charbonneau got hired was because his wife was a Shoshone.
Oh, yeah.
And they knew, based on talking with the Hidatsa and the Mandan village,
Yes.
that ultimately when they got the headwaters of the Missouri, the tribe there were the Shoshones. They were the ones that had all the horses.
Yes.
And so they knew they wanted to get to the headwaters of the Missouri, but then they wanted to be able to trade for some horses.
Yes.
And they knew it was going to be the Shoshone. And Sacagawea being Shoshone was,
Oh, okay.
that's why they didn't like Charbonneau. They already had French Indian interpreters.
Yes.
Charbonneau could speak Hidatsa, which Sacagawea could speak Hidatsa, but she also spoke her native language, which
Yes.
is Shoshone.
Yes.
So they had a direct communication with the Shoshone when they finally meet up with them.
Yes, I got you. Yeah.
So one other thing I wanted to point out on the map is This Mandan village was big trading in the northern plains. It's in North Dakota over by Bismarck.
Yes.
And Northwest Trading Company sent one of their traders down there to survey the location of the Mandan village. His name was
Yes.
David Thompson.
Yes.
David Thompson spent the winter of 1795-96 at the Mandan village, and using astrological readings and an almanac, he calculated the longitude and latitude, and it's pretty accurate
Yes.
what he did. And so that's why it shows up on this map,
I got
because
you.
of David Thompson. So when Lewis and Clark get ready to leave on their expedition, they already know 3 places on Earth that have been measured for longitude and latitude. So in the spring of 1805, when they're leaving the Mandan village, they pretty much know the direction they're going.
Yes.
It's almost due west, but they also know the distance, because at this latitude, it's about 50 miles for every degree of longitude. So you just take David Thompson's longitude reading here, subtract it from Vancouver's longitude reading at the mouth of the Columbia, take that and multiply times 50, and you get about 1,200 miles.
Yeah.
1,200 miles to come across, which is pretty nice when you're going off into the unknown.
Of
to
course.
know how
Of
far you
course.
gotta go.
Of course.
Yeah.
But they did not take that route.
They did go that route.
Oh, this is after they passed the Great Falls?
This is after they left the Mandan village. They followed the Missouri all the way up into Montana.
Oh, so there is
to the
no
headwaters.
Where is the Missouri here?
Well, it's here.
Oh, okay, got you.
Yeah.
I got,
And,
oh.
and these drawings are based on
Oh,
what
okay.
natives told trappers, and the trappers told the surveyors. And,
Okay.
so there's a lot of variation. There's no accuracy in the detail, because you're trying to convert people telling you, well, it takes about 3 days to get there, or it takes 20 days to get there. How do you convert that into miles?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
topography is.
Yeah.
How many miles or intake that the Missouri has? You said, why is this Dakotas important? What does that mean in terms?
That's where they spent the winter of 1805, 1804, 1805.
Is that another source of water?
No, it's downstream of where the Yellowstone and the Missouri come together.
Okay, okay,
And it's just a big trading center that
Okay.
has been there in the northern plains. So a lot of the hunter gatherers would come and trade meat and pemmican and stuff like that. They raised corn and squash.
Okay.
They were a farming community along the Missouri River. So it was just a big trading center
are you talking about now or then?
then.
Who was there then?
These northern plains were primarily farmers along the Missouri River and Mississippi valleys. But then when you get away from the valleys, those type of tribes were hunter-gatherers, like the Sioux and the Hidatsa. They were hunter-gatherers, so they're out there hunting buffalo and
That's Native American, right?
Native Americans. Yeah.
But no European yet.
Yeah, the Mandan village had English and French trappers or tradesmen coming into them from about probably the 1770s, 1780s. So they had been coming in there because the whites would come in and they would trade for furs.
Oh, okay.
And so it was a lot easier to just go to like a rendezvous
Okay.
and offer up your trade goods for a bunch of furs. And yeah, so they've been at the Mandan village for a long time trading. In fact, when Lewis and Clark got to the Mandan village, that's where they found, was it LePage? Wasn't LePage one of the Frenchmen that they picked up in the Mandan village? Because they had a couple of guys they court-martialed and kicked off the Corps of Discovery, and they went back to St. Louis. And so they hired a couple of guys at the Mandan village,
Okay.
in addition to Charbonneau and Sacagawea.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when did the Missouri River, when did they abandon the river and they have to walk on land?
It wasn't until they got way over upstream of the Three Forks of the Missouri, which is down south of Helena.
Oh, I-90?
Yeah, down there right by I-90 is the
Okay.
Three Forks.
Okay.
And then they took the western fork, which they called the Jefferson River, and they followed it up another 100 miles or so until you get almost to Dillon, Montana. And that's about where they took a right and went up to the Continental Divide.
So they're in Montana, that is close to I-15, correct?
Yeah,
About so they left their stuff there at Jefferson.
they left, they had caches they left at various places.
Oh,
But at the
okay.
Three Forks, they left some caches.
Okay,
Because the streams, once these Three Forks came together, as you went upstream from them, they were very
okay.
narrow streams.
And I think they have like a monument there at Jefferson River
At
Dillon.
there's a state park at the Three Forks that you can drive
Yes,
to.
okay. And then from Dillon, where did you go after? They walk above the mountain? What? How did
Yeah,
you
they,
cross?
when they took a right and headed towards the Continental Divide.
Yes.
Off of the Jefferson, which was a different river by the time you get down there.
Yes.
But that's where they met the Shoshone.
Okay,
And if you've ever driven to Dillon.
Yes.
From Butte on I-15.
yes,
There's a reservoir there right by the interstate.
yes.
And that, right in that area is where they met up with the Shoshone.
Is it on the west side of Interstate?
Yeah, it's on the west side.
Yes, I know what it is.
Yeah, you
West
drive right by it.
Yes, and then,
Then right up to due west there.
Yes,
They went
yes.
over Lemhi Pass.
yes,
And they were hoping to just jump on a big river and go straight to the Pacific. Well,
okay.
the Salmon River's on the other side there, and it's just a rough river.
Then how did they catch what is the river they caught after that?
Well, they didn't go down the Salmon River. They got back out of the Salmon River Valley, went back over the top of the mountain, and got on through the Bitterroot River, which runs north to Missoula. And so they followed the Bitterroot River on horseback all the
Okay.
way up to Missoula to Travelers Rest. And of course, they're meeting different Indians and stuff as they get there. And so at Missoula is where the Bitterroot and the Clark's Fork come together, and then that leaves.
So they did not take the Snake River.
They didn't get to the Snake River until they went over the Bitterroot Mountains by horseback.
Okay, I
And they
get.
got on the Clearwater River, and then eventually it ran into the Snake River, and then the Snake River ran into the Columbia River.
You mean Clearwater River? That's in Idaho, correct?
Yeah.
And from Idaho, they were able to get the Snake River.
That connects just before the Snake
Yes,
goes into
yes.
Columbia.
Oh, the last portion of the
Yeah,
Snake
just a
River.
short portion, the
And they
lower
get-
portion of the Snake.
And they got to Basco and
And then once they
Columbia.
got on the Columbia, then they built canoes, dug out canoes, and they went flying down the Columbia.
And the reverse trip was the same thing.
Yep, they came up with canoes, and they left their horses with some Nez Perce, I believe. And when they came back the next year, they picked up their horses again, and then they worked their way back up over the Bitterroot Mountains.
And in Portland, where did they go? What is the spot in Portland, Oregon, where they landed? Is
It's called Astoria.
Astoria,
Astoria, yeah.
Look,
That's where Fort Clatsop is.
the port, right?
Yeah.
Port of Astoria.
On the south side of the Columbia River.
Yeah.
And that's where they spent the winter. It was a little protected from the coast.
Yes,
but
yes.
it just rained all the time. They
but-
were miserable there.
Yes, they were miserable. Yes, it was like
But, I've told you, everything downstairs that's in the interpretive center.
you made it very private, very private. Listen, I really appreciate it. Thank you,
Yeah, you're
thank you,
welcome.
appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Thanks for coming
You
today.
made it